Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are here together right now talking about success criteria 2.3 and 2.4 biome interdependence. It's a great topic. Hope you have fun with it. We're looking at standard 2.3 right now. Identify the biotic and abiotic elements of the biomes. And we've broken that down for the success criteria. You can look at your success criteria right now and follow along. We have number one, you're going to define biotic factor. Number two, define abiotic factor. And we've talked about that a little bit already. Number three, define biome. Number four, understand how abiotic and biotic elements work together in ecosystems and biomes. And number five, recognize how abiotic and biotic help identify the differences in the major biomes. And then we'll move on to standard 2.4, which is to identify the elemental conditions and interdependencies among organisms found in the major biomes. It's a mouthful, but we'll break it down into easy steps for success criteria 2.4. Number one, define interdependence. Number two, we're going to identify on a map all biome locations. Number three, describe environmental conditions in all terrestrial, which means land biomes. Number four, describe environmental conditions in aquatic, both marine and freshwater biomes. Number five, explain how adaptations allow organisms to survive in their biome. Number six, define symbiosis. And finally, number seven, list symbiotic relationships that occur in the biomes. So hopefully by the end of both of those standards and the success criteria, you will be successful. One way we can measure that is by our self-assessment criteria, which you can see. N is for novice. I'm just learning this and don't understand it yet. That means you might need to ask for some more help from either the teacher or an expert in your class, a friend maybe. A, apprentice. I'm starting to get this, but still need someone to coach me through it, a teacher or a friend. P, practitioner. I can do this mostly by myself, but sometimes get stuck. Or E, you're an expert and you think you can understand it and you can teach it to someone else, which means you should be kind and help someone else. All right, we're moving on to success criteria. Number one from 2.3, identify how the biotic and abiotic elements of the major biomes. So number one is identify biotic factor. So anything related to living organisms or organic material in an environment is biotic. Organic means living. Anything that is living, that means a plant, animal, insects, even including dead animals. So we give some examples here. Some plants, the examples include plants, insects, dead animals, bacteria, seeds, and humans. These are all organic or living. They are biotic. Remember, we talked about bio means living, but biology is the study of living things. All right, moving on to success criteria number two, we're going to define abiotic factors. So anything related to non-living elements in an environment. So examples of these are rocks, sunlight, temperature, rainfall, air, and dirt. And so I often say these are those factors or things that are neither living nor dead. They never live, they never die. They are non-living. So don't get confused with abiotic meaning something that has died. If it has lived and can die, it is biotic. If it can never live and it can never die, it is abiotic. So rocks, they never live, they never die. Sunlight, the same thing. Temperature, rainfall, air, and dirt. Those are abiotic. They neither live nor die. They are non-living. So at this point, if we were in class, we would do a turn and talk. But you need to write down at the top of the next page or somewhere on your paper describing what you think the difference between abiotic and biotic means. If you're watching this video, that means you're not actively in class or you're working on this by yourself individually. So you can write, I want you to write this down, what the difference is between abiotic and biotic means. And you can pause this video now. So you may have come up with a lot of different things, but once again, abiotic, it can neither live nor die. It's non-living. Biotic, it's living and it can die. So that's the main difference between those two things. They do work together in a lot of ways, but there's a huge difference between those two. Go ahead and do your self-assessment for success criteria number 1 and 2, being able to define biotic and abiotic factors. You can pause the video at this time. Moving on to success criteria number 3, define biome. So a biome is a community of plants and animals that have common characteristics for the environment they exist in. So these are the things that common, similar, they're very much alike. So in a biome, the plants and animals have common characteristics. Land biomes or terrestrial biomes are typically defined by their rainfall, climate, and dominant vegetation. They are divided into categories including grassland, tundra, desert, tropical rainforest, deciduous forest, and carnivorous forest, or taiga. And I'll go back and talk about this in just a minute after we're done writing our notes on our success criteria. The aquatic biome or water biome is definitely the largest biome. We heard that in the Bill Nye video. Water covers nearly 75% of the Earth's surface in the forms of oceans, lakes, rivers, etc. Just like land biomes, the aquatic biome can be divided into 2 categories, both freshwater and saltwater. So that's a bunch of information there. So a biome, we can talk about, so for example, if we're talking about land biomes, we gave some examples: grassland, tundra, desert, tropical rainforest, deciduous forest, and carnivorous forest. And you're going to learn the characteristics, what makes each of those unique. So each of those biomes will have unique plants and animals. And that's what it's talking about. A biome is a community of plants and animals that have common characteristics for the environment they exist in. So for each of those biomes, each of those will have unique plants and animals, different than the other biomes. You do need to know that terrestrial means land. It's Earth. We live on a terrestrial planet that has land. And some of the main points about biomes are the amount of rainfall. So a desert's going to have a different amount of rainfall than a grassland or a tropical rainforest. So that makes it unique, different than that other biome. Also, so rainfall climate, and climate is the weather over a long period of time, and the dominant vegetation. That means what trees, what bushes, what are those plants, vegetation that are in that biome. And so we have land biome, terrestrial biomes, and then we also have aquatic biome. Agua, you could talk about in Spanish, agua, that's the same root. Aquatic is water. So water biome, and there's a lot of water in the world, lakes, oceans, rivers, streams, ponds. So those make up 75% of all of Earth's surface. And we can break those into two main types that are unique or different: freshwater and saltwater. So at this time, you need to go ahead and do your self-assessment on success criteria number 3, being able to define biome. Remember, N is novice, A, apprentice, P, practitioner, E, an expert. Moving on to success criteria number 4. Understand how abiotic and biotic elements work together in ecosystems and biomes. So living and non-living elements, so biotic and abiotic elements in an environment, work together to balance cycles on the earth. Examples of this understanding is trees remove carbon dioxide gas from the air. I'll say that again. Trees remove carbon dioxide gas from the air. Sunlight gives energy to plants to produce food, and rocks provide a home for insects. So we talked about food chain, and we talked about how if one organism is killed or becomes extinct, it will affect the whole ecosystem. So that's a negative aspect. So living and non-living things, biotic and abiotic elements, factors, things, those are all same words. Factors, elements, characteristics, things, those are all meaning one thing. So living, non-living things, they work together in an ecosystem to keep it in balance. And if we take one of those things out, or we make one of those things die, then it will affect the whole organism. Every single part of an ecosystem is very important. It's very vital. And so each part serves a purpose. Even the rock, the mosquito, even though we might not think it is, the mosquito serves a part in the ecosystem, an important part. Sunlight, rocks, fire ants, spiders, lizards, snakes, and mice. Oh my goodness, I don't care for those. Very scary to me. But those serve an important purpose in an ecosystem and biomes. So at this time, go ahead and do your self-assessment of success criteria number 4, and being able to understand how abiotic and biotic elements work together in ecosystems and biomes. Remember, this is stuff we've already really talked about. It seems more complicated than it is, but we've already talked about this with food chains. It's just adding that non-living element. All right, we're going to move on to success criteria number 5. Recognize how abiotic and biotic factors help identify the differences in the major biomes. So we talked about just a minute ago in success criteria number 3 about defining biomes. Now we're going to be able to start talking about those characteristics. So climate is the main determining factor to know where plants and animals live. Climate, once again, is, so if we look at weather, so weather happens daily. It might rain, it might not rain. It might be sunshiny, it might not, it might be cloudy. So, but over a long period of time, we can see a trend. We can see, okay, a desert, it might not rain a lot. So those days of not raining build up over time. Here in Knoxville, in Tennessee, we usually have a kind of cold winter. We have fall. We have spring where it rains a lot. And then we have a summer when it's hot and humid. So we have a distinct biome. Those are the characteristics of our biome. And that's part of our climate, the amount of rainfall. So moving on to that second point, average rainfall temperature is important, and sunlight make up the climate for a biome. So the amount of rainfall, temperature, and sunlight make up the climate for the biome. Plants and animals have adaptations to survive in different biomes. So adaptations, plants and animals adapt to the weather conditions, the amount of sunlight, the temperature. So some organisms, some animals, some plants cannot live in our biome because it gets too cold during the winter. So there's certain, a shark can't live in our biome because it doesn't fit into it hasn't adapted to live in our biome. So all of those things help us to recognize how a plant and animal can live in certain biomes. Go ahead and do your success criteria, your self-assessment for success criteria number 5. Recognize how abiotic and biotic help identify the differences in major biomes. Okay, if you're a little bit confused about this, we can look at certain trees. I'm going to stay on success criteria number 5 for just a bit longer. So I can look at our biome, which we'll talk about in a minute, and I can see that there are certain plants and animals in the biome that we're in. We'll talk about that biome in just a second. But our biome, we have some trees that lose their leaves during the winter. That's why we have fall. It's not why we have fall, but it shows that we have fall. So those trees have adapted to our climate over time. We have black bears. We don't have grizzly bears because grizzly bears are in a different biome, but we have black bears. We have small squirrels. And other biomes, they might have larger squirrels. So we can identify, we can say, okay, this is this specific biome based off of what plants and animals are in that biome at that time. All right, we'll move on to 2.4, identify the environmental conditions and interdependencies among organisms found in major biomes. The first success criteria for this standard, we're going to define interdependence. This is where we're talking about those root words. Inter means between. We're not talking about enter with an E. We're talking about enter with an I. We're not entering a room. We're enter meaning in between. Dependence means to rely on another. So interdependence is a relationship where two or more organisms rely or depend on each other for success. Some examples of this: plants give off oxygen that animals take in, and animals give off carbon dioxide that plants take in. So when I breathe out, a plant can breathe in pretty much that carbon dioxide that I give off. When that plant breathes out, it breathes out oxygen, it gives off oxygen, and I can breathe in that oxygen. So I have a relationship. We're not dating, but I do have a relationship between plants. You have a relationship with plants. And as we can see from this picture too, we have a butterfly and a flower. So this butterfly is getting nectar to eat, getting that energy that we've talked about in our food chain from that flower. And while this is happening, the butterfly gets pollen that all over its legs and its body. And when it flies to the next flower, it is helping to pollinate the next flower, meaning those flowers are reproducing. They can make other flowers. So the butterfly and flower are working together. Oh, and here's a nice little flow chart of of photosynthesis happening, the plant giving off the flow of carbon dioxide. The cow looks like it's dead. Yes, and maybe it's giving off gas. Yes, cows do give off gas, and that cycle continues. We can also see the fish here, little clownfish, and the anemones. The anemones protect it, while also the fish have a relationship with it. So it works together. It helps to defend it from other predators. It helps to keep it clean in the area, and they help each other. So there's interdependence there. All right, we're moving on. You go ahead and do your success criteria for number 1, define interdependence. All right, we're going to move on to success criteria number 2, identify on a map all biome locations. So we have the list on our success criteria: tropical rainforest, temperate deciduous forest, taiga coniferous forests, grasslands and savannas, desert, tundra, freshwater, and marine. So we're going to look over at looking at your map on the next page. Let's look at some of these locations. So as you can see, in north eastern United States, we have we actually have tropical rainforest. Whether you actually we have temperate. Sorry, we have temperate deciduous forest, as you can see here. I was getting ready to see. We have a temperate deciduous forest over here. Down here, we actually have where the tropical rainforest is. So we have tropical forest down here. We do have over here some desert in northern Africa. We have some over here in western southwest United States. Some all throughout here. There's some desert in Australia over here. Polar and high mountain ice. So we got definitely some polar high mountain ice over here. We have some, it almost looks like a wishbone on this map. Those are those places. We have, let's see, temperate grasslands. We're going to be talking about those grasslands. And there's some grasslands over here in more southern Africa. We have a few grasslands, just a small piece of the United States is grassland. Temperate deciduous forest, that's what I just talked about. That's where we are. We actually live in a temperate deciduous forest. Coniferous forest. These are those locations all up here in Canada, much of northwestern United States is coniferous forest. And then we have this tundra, which is mostly up here in the north on the globe. So at this time, try to identify about how many biomes did North America have. And if you need to go back to the map, and you're going to write this on your paper, you're not going to really talk to anybody about this while you're watching the video. So look back. If you need to pause this, you can do that to see how many biomes you think the United States has. All right, go ahead and do your success criteria number 2, identify on a map all biome locations. Moving on to success criteria number 3, environmental conditions and all terrestrial, meaning land biome. So we're going to describe those conditions. So tropical rainforest, this is where we're looking at those characteristics. What makes a rainforest unique as a biome? What makes it different than the other biomes? Rainforests are found along the equator. So that's that line, that imaginary line that runs throughout the world. And here's the example, the equator. It runs through, this is where it's hottest on Earth. So the tropical rainforests are found along that equator. They receive more than 75 inches of rain a year, and the temperature stays between 70 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit all year. So that's pretty warm, and the temperature is consistent. It's about the same throughout the whole year. The rainforest produces 40% of the world's oxygen. That's a lot of oxygen. The rainforest has the most biodiversity. Remember, bio means life, diversity means amount. So there's a lot of life. The rainforest has the most biodiversity of any of the biomes on Earth. This means half of the Earth's plants and animals live here. So think about what are the major characteristics, the temperature, the climate over a long period of time, the amount of rain, what plants and animals might be unique there, live there. All right, moving on to temperate deciduous forest, and this one should sound familiar. Temperate deciduous forest are located in mid-latitude areas. So let's look back at our map again. So these are these mid-latitude. So this is square in the center of the earth kind of deal, the equator. But deciduous forests are this mid-latitude. They're about the midpoints in the north and midpoints in the south on the globe. So mid-latitude areas, temperate means not too extreme. And deciduous means shedding leaves annually. So every year, the leaves around here shed their leaves. So that's what deciduous means. And temperate means not too extreme. So it's not really, it might seem like it, but it's not too hot and it doesn't get too cold. We don't have very little rain, and we don't have a whole lot of rain, especially compared to the tropical rainforest. So a temperate deciduous forest receives between 30 and 60 inches of rain a year, and the temperature is generally between minus 20 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So a much larger rain than the tropical rainforest for temperature. Deciduous forests have all 4 seasons and have rich soil. So fall, talking about winter, spring, summer, fall. We'll talk about that when we get to the universe. But winter, spring, summer, and fall, the 4 seasons. Not all biomes have those distinct different seasons. Taiga, and I might pronounce that incorrectly. I am definitely using my East Tennessee accent with this. Taiga carnivorous forest. Carnivorous forests are found below the Arctic Circle and above the mid-latitudes. So we can look back at our map here, and as we can see, we have those carnivorous forests, not carnivorous. They don't eat people or other organisms. Carnivorous forests. Those are below the Arctic Circle and have about mid-latitude. They receive between 12 and 30 inches of rain a year, and the temperature is generally between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Winter lasts for about 6 months with a very short summer. And some students have said this is a desert. And I kind of shy away from that because it is a unique, although it does have very little rainfall, I'm going to shy away from calling it a desert because a desert has a different characteristics than coniferous forest. But it does have very little rainfall, has a short summer, long winters. Coniferous trees are evergreen trees that do not lose their leaves in autumn. So as we can see, those trees with nettles or needles. So we do have some of these, but in a coniferous forest, most, if not all of the trees are that. So that's what makes it different from a deciduous forest like we live in. Grasslands and savannas. So grasslands are typically found between forest and deserts. Savannas are typically found between rainforest and deserts near the equator. So we can look at those at different locations throughout the world. There are temperate grasslands. Remember, temperate means not too extreme. So prairies, steppes, pampas, and tropical grasslands. These are all savannas. And yearly rainfall is not enough to support tall trees. Some grasslands have rainy season with 15 to 25 inches of rain and a dry season with less than 1 inch of rain. Temperatures depend on latitudes and can range between negative 30 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So even more of a range of temperatures. As the name suggests, the grasslands are dominated by grass. And as we can see, because of that unique amount of rainfall, which is very little, and it is not able to support trees. It has a very unique climate temperature. So the rainfall and temperature work together for that. And really the most it has is maybe small bushes and mainly grass. Desert. So deserts are mostly found between the equator and mid-latitudes. Very little average rainfall, less than 10 inches a year. Temperatures depend on location, but mostly range from daily 100 degrees to nightly 32 degrees. So it gets very hot during the day and it drops down to being really cold at night. That is a characteristics of a desert. Plants and animals are highly adapted to live in the desert. With very little rainfall, animals must get their water from what they eat, and plants have to store water and protect themselves from being eaten. Antarctica and the North Pole are considered polar deserts. Okay, so it is in this presentation, but yeah, so those places above the coniferous forest, those are more extreme. So they're getting less rainfall. So that is one characteristic of a desert: less rainfall. But most of the deserts that we're talking about, we're familiar with, these have very little rainfall, but they also have extreme temperatures reaching above 100 and dropping down to being very, very cold at night. And as we can see, the animals and plants have adapted because of the lack of rainfall. And then we have a tundra. The Arctic tundra is located at the Arctic Circle, and actually I made a mistake. This is the one that that's mentioned here with the Antarctica and the North Pole. This one is often considered that polar desert. The Arctic tundra is located at the Arctic Circle. Rainfall amounts are like the desert at less than 10 inches per year, but it's in the form of snow. Temperatures range from below 40 degrees to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, with an average temperature of negative 18 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very cold. The ground below the topsoil is permanently frozen and is called permafrost. The tundra is treeless, and most animals don't live there year-round. They migrate in and out. And the tundra only has 2 seasons, a long 8-month winter and a short 4-month summer. So this is an important characteristic, that it has permafrost. There is a layer of the soil, the ground, the dirt, that is permanently frozen. So that means plants can't actually put their roots very deeply. That's why there's not really very many trees, if really any trees at all. And most animals don't live there because it gets so cold most of the year. All right, at this time, go ahead and do your self-assessment on success criteria number 3, being able to describe environmental conditions in terrestrial land biomes. So we're looking at those unique characteristics. Look back through your notes and kind of try to identify what those unique characteristics are. You can highlight it, you can put a note beside it, but those are going to be important to know. And once you've done that, do your success criteria. All right, moving on to success criteria number 4. We're going to describe environmental conditions in aquatic, meaning water, marine, and freshwater biomes. So marine, this is the largest biome on Earth, covering 70% of the planet. There are 3 types of marine, which means saltwater biomes. We have oceans, we have coral reefs, and we have estuaries. Those 3 we can then break down the marine, ocean, marine, saltwater biome into 3 different categories: oceans, coral reefs, and estuaries. The temperature, average temperature of the ocean is 39 degrees Fahrenheit. There are 3 layers of the ocean called light zones based on how much sunlight the zone receives. So sunlit, twilight, and midnight. And 90% of all the Earth lives, 90% of all life on Earth lives in the ocean. So once again, we have a temperature that stays around the same. We have 3 layers, and most of those layers we would never see. We would not see that midnight layer. It's going to be very deep in the ocean. Twilight, some people might see sometimes if they go scuba diving, and the sunlit area, which is at the top of that marine biome. And 90% of all life lives in the ocean. Then we have our other kind of marine freshwater, marine biome, which is freshwater. There are 3 main types of freshwater biomes: ponds and lakes, streams and rivers, and wetlands. So freshwater is defined as having a low salt content. So that's why we say there's a difference between those 2. That one has lots of salt and one has very little, if no, salt. Rainfall varies widely depending on the location, anywhere from 7 to 10 inches or 100 inches per year. Average temperatures also vary depending on location. Many plants and animals can live in or out of the water. So frogs, toads, turtles, all of those things, a lot of those animals have adapted to be able to either live in or around the water. All right, at this point, Let's see. We're going to do success criteria number 5. No, do your success self-assessment for success criteria number 4. Describing environmental conditions in aquatic, marine, and freshwater biomes. Moving on to success criteria number 5. We're getting closer to the end, guys. Stick with me. Explain how adaptations allow organisms to survive in their biome. So plants that live in a cold environment have cone-shaped trees that get rid of snow with needle-like leaves and do not freeze. These are evergreen to conduct photosynthesis all year, or they must stay low to the ground and grow in groups to protect from icy winds. So these are adaptations. These are ways that plants have adapted or changed over time to fit into their biome. So as we can see with this picture down here, they have needles that are not leaves, which help the snow to fall off, and it doesn't freeze and kill the branches. Animals that live in a cold environment, so some of these have thick fur or blubber, have color-changing fur or feathers for summer and winter, have short appendages. So when we talk about appendages, we're talking about short ears, short legs, arms, tails. So those are appendages. And do not release heat, big feet that run in the snow, and some animals hibernate in winter. So these are all characteristics of animals that may live in a cold environment. So plants that live in a hot, dry environment, like a desert, have waxy leaves and to not let water evaporate. Shallow roots that spread way out to collect water quickly. Thorns or spines to protect against being eaten, because remember, animals need to get their water from plants, what they eat. So plants protect themselves with thorns. And the plants are able to store water in stems, roots, leaves, and trunks. So these are adaptations, ways these plants have changed in order to survive this biome. Animals that live in a hot, dry environment can get the water they need from the food they eat. Can be nocturnal, meaning they come out at night, and have long appendages to release heat, are light in color, and burrow into the ground to escape the heat. These are all important things that you're going to need to know. So animals in those hot environments, they have long appendages, as we can see, long ears, long legs. It actually releases some of that heat. They burrow into the ground, they dig down into the ground, and plants have waxy leaves, shallow roots that spread way out, thorns to protect them, and they're able to store water. Plants that live in the rainforest will either grow really tall to reach the sunlight or vine up a tall tree. So they'll be able to be like a vine and go up, use the tallness of another tree to get to the sunlight. Or are small and survive in the shade. Will have large leaves to collect available sunlight, and will have fruits or flowers to attract insects to pollinate them. And as we can see, in this canopy of trees, we have very large trees. The ones lower to the ground have those large leaves that spread out, all trying to get sunlight. Animals that live in the rainforest will have long arms or tails to swing and grab from tree to tree. So we can see right here, this monkey because we have tall trees. They can be loud in the canopy to communicate, to talk to each other, have camouflage. They might use mimicry or bright colors to warn predators. So some butterflies act like other butterflies that are poisonous to kind of get predators away from them. Birds may have many different sized beaks to eat different available foods like fruits, nuts, seeds, or insects. Still, we're still talking about competition in the food chain. So this bird, toucan, has adapted to eat certain fruits and certain plants so that they have less competition for their food sources. These are all characteristics of plants and animals in a rainforest. So at this time, you need to write down on your paper somewhere, how are our local animals adapted to live in our environment? You can pause the video at this time to take time to write that down. So some ways that our local animals have adapted to our environment. For example, the black bear. It doesn't get as cold, so it doesn't have to hold as much, but it does put on a lot of weight during the fall in preparation for a colder winter when there's not as much food sources around. So that's one way the black bear has adapted. Some other ways, so hibernation. So some of our animals hibernate. So they kind of sleep when it gets cold. So hopefully you've come up with a few different types of adaptations that animals might have in our environment. And go ahead and do your self-assessment for success criteria number 5. Moving on to success criteria number 6, the last one that we have here. Actually, we had, this is the last one, after 6 and 7. Define symbiosis. Symbiosis is any type of a close and long-term relationship or interaction between two different biological organisms. The 3 types of symbiosis are mutualism, where both organisms benefit; commensalism, one organism benefits, the other one is unaffected or not harmed. And so commensalism, only one of the organisms benefits; and parasitism, one organism benefits and one is actually harmed. And we have some examples here. So mutualism, much like the butterfly, it comes in, gets its nectar, it gets so it's getting what it needs, it's helping, but then it takes pollen on its legs and body and transfers that to another flower, which helps it to then have other plants the next season. Commensalism, so we have a whale, and we have barnacles. Barnacles grow on the sides of whales sometimes, and so that helps them to travel, get their food sources. It helps the barnacles, but it neither harms nor helps the whale. So that's commensalism. It's only helping the barnacles, but it's not harming or helping the whale. Parasitism, like a tick on a dog. Ticks get what they need from the dog, a food source, and also harm the dog, can give it diseases. It's taking away from the blood source from the dog. So that's a form of parasitism. Go ahead and do your self-assessment of success criteria number 6, define symbiosis. All right, number 7, the last success criteria that we have, list symbiotic relationships that occur in the biomes. So mutualism in the freshwater biome. So mutualism, as we can see, this bird is actually picking out food scraps from the crocodile's teeth. It's helping the crocodile to be healthy, and the bird is getting a food source. So it's actually helping both of these. And this creature here, I think this is actually an alligator, is actually opening up its mouth. Maybe a crocodile. I'm a little confused as to which one it is, but it actually keeps its mouth open the whole time. It does not kill the bird. Then we have parasitism in the desert. So I'm not sure exactly what this one is. It looks like there's maybe some insects or something on the back of this that's leeching on to that lizard, probably causing it to be harmed a little bit. Definitely harming and helping the other organism. Commensalism, got these plants. This plant is actually in this tree. It's not harming the tree, but it's getting some help. So it's only helping this flower, but the tree itself is neither getting harmed nor helped. Mutualism in the tundra biome. So as you can see, we have some different things here that these two organisms are working together. Commensalism in the marine biome. Commensalism, as we can see, these tag along. They're taking the food leftovers from the shark. The shark is neither getting helped or harmed, so it's only helping these organisms. Mutualism in the savanna biome. These birds, they're up off the ground, so they're safe from other predators. They also get food source from the bugs on these oxen-style buffalo, and the buffalo get the insects off of them. So it's a mutual relationship. All right. That's all, folks. Hope you got everything you need. I'll be back to be able to, if you have any questions, remember you can ask both me, you can ask your friends, you can ask experts in the class. So see you next time.